My name is Richard Harrison. Welcome to Top 10 Emotional Comeback.
On my 71st birthday, I stood outside Riverside Manor, the restaurant where my beloved wife Sarah and I had celebrated every precious milestone for 42 years. I wanted to feel her presence one last time, to remember the warmth of her smile, the sound of her laughter echoing through these walls. But when I arrived, they turned me away at the door. "Sir," the manager said, his voice dripping with false concern, "your daughter called ahead. She said you're unwell, that you might become disoriented, that you might cause a disturbance." I stood there in the pouring rain, watching families inside, celebrating, laughing, living. And I questioned everything. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my daughter, about who I even was anymore. Until a stranger stepped forward. A single father with kind eyes and a little girl in a yellow raincoat. And what he said to me that night, it changed absolutely everything. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. Thank you for being here. It means the world to me. Now, before I continue, I need to tell you something important. This story contains some creative elements added for storytelling purposes. Any similarity to real people or events is purely coincidental. But the message, the heart of what I'm sharing with you, that's real. And I pray it touches your heart the way it's touched mine. So there I was standing in that November rain, my wool coat soaked through, watching strangers celebrate inside Riverside Manor. Through the foggy windows, I could see everything I'd lost. Families gathered around tables, a grandfather lifting his grandson onto his shoulders, a couple holding hands over candlelight. It looked like a painting, something Norman Rockwell might have dreamed up. Warm, perfect, everything a family celebration should be. And I wasn't part of it anymore. 3 weeks earlier, I'd made this reservation. Right after my doctor's appointment, when Dr. Morrison had given me a clean bill of health. Sharp as a tack, Richard, he'd said with that encouraging smile doctors save for their elderly patients. Better cognitive function than most 50-year-olds I see. I'd walked out his office feeling something I hadn't felt in the 3 years since Sarah died. Hope. Maybe 71 wasn't the end of everything. Maybe there was still time to rebuild what grief had torn apart. So I called Riverside Manor and reserved table 12. Our table, the one tucked in the corner by the stone fireplace where Sarah always insisted we sit. It's the warmest spot in the whole restaurant, she'd say, though I think she just loved watching the flames dance while we ate. Now I stood in the rain, my hand trembling as I reached into my jacket pocket. Behind my driver's license was a photograph. Sarah and me on our wedding day, 1974. She wore a simple white dress with lace sleeves. I wore a suit borrowed from my college roommate. We were standing in front of St. Michael's Cathedral, both of us grinning like we'd just won the lottery. In a way, we had. 50 years, I whispered to the photograph, my voice breaking. "Happy anniversary, my darling." The rain came down harder, colder. I tucked the photo away, straightened my shoulders, and walked toward the entrance. The heavy oak door swung open. Warmth rushed out to greet me. The smell of rosemary and garlic. The murmur of happy conversations. The gentle clink of silverware on fine china. For just a moment, I felt Sarah beside me. Her hand slipping into mine the way it always did when we entered nice restaurants. That little squeeze she'd give me. That smile that said, "We made it." Then I saw Marcus Bennett, the general manager, approaching with an expression that made my stomach drop. "Mr. Harrison." His voice was careful, the way people speak to confused children. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding? I glanced past him at table 12. A young couple sat there, sharing oysters, laughing at something on their phones. "I have a reservation," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. 7:30. Richard Harrison. Marcus clasped his hands in front of him. I recognized that posture from 40 years in business. The stance of someone about to deliver bad news they don't want to deliver. "Sir, your daughter called this morning." She explained the situation. Situation? My heart started hammering against my ribs. What situation? His eyes flickered to the hostess standing behind the podium, watching us with wide, sympathetic eyes. She said, "You've been experiencing some confusion lately." Memory issues. She was very concerned. She said you might not remember making reservations or canceling them. The words hit me like a physical blow. I don't have memory issues, I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. I made this reservation 3 weeks ago, and I certainly didn't cancel it. I understand this must be frustrating, sir. Frustrating? Several diners had turned to look at us now. The old man making a scene. I lowered my voice, trying desperately to maintain some dignity. I'm not confused. I'm here for dinner. On my birthday. At the restaurant where my wife and I celebrated our 40th anniversary. Where we celebrated every anniversary for 42 years. The hostess stepped forward, her young face full of practiced sympathy. Mr. Harrison, your daughter sounded very worried about you. She said you've been having episodes, that you might become agitated if things didn't go as you expected. Episodes. I tasted the bitterness of that word. I don't have episodes, I said quietly. Marcus touched my elbow gently, the way you'd guide someone who might fall. Perhaps it would be best if you went home, sir. Called your daughter. I'm sure she'd want to know you're safe. Safe. As if I were a child who'd wandered away from his parents. I pulled my arm free. I'd like to speak with the owner. I am the owner, Mr. Harrison. Marcus's voice remained infuriatingly calm. And I'm sorry, but given the circumstances, I can't seek you tonight. It wouldn't be appropriate. Inappropriate. I was being deemed inappropriate at the restaurant where I'd proposed to my wife 52 years ago, where we'd celebrated the birth of our daughter, where we'd toasted to decades of love and partnership. I stood there for a long moment, feeling every eye in that entrance watching me. An old man making a scene. An old man who couldn't remember if he'd canceled his own reservation. An old man whose daughter had to call ahead and warn the staff about his confusion. I see, I said finally. Then I apologized for the inconvenience. I turned and walked back into the rain. The door closed behind me with a soft click, shutting me out of the warmth and light and everything I'd thought I still had. I stood on the sidewalk, rain drumming on my shoulders, and pulled out my phone. My hand shook as I scrolled to Victoria's number. The call went straight to voicemail. This is Victoria Harrison. Leave a message. It's Dad, I said, trying so hard to keep my voice steady. I'm at Riverside Manor, where I was. They said you called them. Said I'm confused, Victoria. I don't understand what's happening, but I need you to call me back. Please. I hung up and stared at the phone, willing it to ring. It didn't. Through the restaurant windows, I watched that little boy from earlier hug his grandfather. The old man's face lit up with pure joy, and something in my chest just cracked. That should have been me tonight. That should have been my family, my celebration, my moment of connection. Instead, I was standing in the rain, wondering if maybe I really was losing my mind. Had I canceled the reservation and forgotten? Was Victoria right to be worried? The doctor had said I was fine, but doctors miss things. Maybe I'd been hiding symptoms, even from myself. I thought about the past 3 years since Sarah died. The empty house. The quiet dinners alone. The conversations I had with her photograph before bed. Maybe that wasn't normal. Maybe Victoria had noticed something I couldn't see. Maybe I really was confused. The rain soaked through my coat, and I started to shiver. I should go home, take a hot shower, try to remember if I'd done or said anything lately that would make my daughter think I needed intervention. I was about to walk to my car when I heard a voice behind me. Sir, are you all right? The hand on my shoulder was steady and warm. I turned to find a man in his mid-30s. Dark hair wet from rain. Leather jacket dripping. Eyes holding genuine concern. Beside him stood a little girl in a yellow raincoat dotted with cartoon bees, holding a small umbrella decorated with flowers. She looked up at me with Sarah's eyes, that particular shade of hazel that changed with the light. I'm fine, I said automatically. The man didn't move his hand. I saw what happened in there. That wasn't right. He gestured toward the restaurant. My daughter and I have a table inside. We'd be honored if you'd join us. I stiffened. That's very kind, but I couldn't impose. It's your birthday, the little girl said suddenly, her voice clear and certain. Daddy heard that man say so, and nobody should be alone on their birthday. That's a rule. My throat tightened. It's your birthday too, I managed to say. She shook her head, rain flying from her hood. No, silly. It's your birthday. I make the rules in our house. Something in her father's wry smile broke through my resistance. Or maybe it was the way she looked at me, as if whether I came to dinner mattered more than anything else in the world. All right, I heard myself say. If you're sure. We're sure, he said. Marcus Bennett's face when he saw us walk back in was absolutely priceless. His professional mask slipped for just a second before he nodded at my companion. Mr. Chun, your table is ready. So this stranger was a regular. That explained Marcus's sudden restraint. We followed a server named Emily to a corner booth by the fireplace. The warmth thawed my frozen hands as I slid into the leather seat. The girl bounced in beside me, while her father took the opposite side. See, she said, beaming up at me. Much better than standing in the rain. I couldn't argue with that. I'm Michael Chun, the man said, extending his hand across the table. This is my daughter, Sophie. And you are, he prompted gently. Richard Harrison. His grip was firm, self-sufficient. I recognized it because I had the same handshake. The kind you develop when you've had to be strong for too long. Sophie had already pulled out crayons and was drawing on her placemat. Do you have grandkids, Mr. Richard? She asked without looking up. The question hit me like a punch to the gut. No, I said quietly. No, I don't. That's sad, she said matter-of-factly, still coloring. Grandpas are important. Do you like fishing? Sophie, Michael said gently. It's all right, I interrupted. I used to fish. With my wife. Before I stopped. Couldn't finish. Sophie looked up, her crayon pausing mid-stroke. Did she go to heaven? I nodded, not trusting my voice. I'm sorry, she said, and the simple sincerity of it made my eyes sting. Heaven's nice, though. That's where my mama is. Daddy says she's watching over us. I glanced at Michael, saw the tightness around his eyes. Sophie's mother left when Sophie was 2 weeks old. He explained quietly. We haven't heard from her since. 8 years. He'd been raising this bright, compassionate child alone for 8 years. That must be difficult, I said. We manage. His tone made it clear he didn't want to dwell on it. What brings you to Riverside Manor tonight? I looked down at my wedding ring, turning it slowly on my finger. My wife and I used to come here for every anniversary. 42 years' worth of celebrations at table 12. I gestured toward where the young couple sat. I thought being here would make me feel close to her. And instead they turned you away, Michael said, his jaw tightening. We ordered pasta for Sophie, steak for Michael, salmon for me. As the food came and conversation flowed, I found my appetite returning for the first time in weeks. Michael told me about his work as a software developer, working remotely so he could be home with Sophie. Sophie chattered about third grade, her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, her best friend, Emma, who had a hamster named Butterscotch. She had Sarah's laugh, bright and uninhibited, the kind that made everyone around her smile. And she had dark hair, almost black, that fell in waves around her face. Just like Victoria when she was young. I was imagining things. Grief made you see connections that weren't there. But then Sophie smiled at something Michael said, and I saw it again. That particular tilt of her head, the way her nose crinkled, the dimple in her left cheek, but not her right. Victoria used to smile exactly like that. Mr. Richard? Sophie's voice pulled me back. I made something for you. She pushed her placemat across the table. On it, drawn in crayon, was a stick figure man and a stick figure girl holding hands. Above them, in careful letters, Happy Birthday, Grandpa Richard. My vision blurred. Sophie, this is the best gift anyone's given me in a very long time. You can keep it, she said proudly. As the meal ended and Emily brought the check, which Michael absolutely insisted on paying, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Connected. These strangers had reminded me that kindness still existed in the world. Michael pulled a business card from his wallet. I mean what I said. If you need anything, and I mean anything, please call. I took the card. Michael Chun, Software Development, Portland, Oregon, followed by a phone number. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Both of you. You've made a difficult night bearable. Sophie hugged me, fierce and quick. I hope you have lots more birthdays, Grandpa Richard. I watched them walk away, Michael's hand on Sophie's shoulder, heads bent together as they laughed. The picture of a complete family, even with a missing piece. And as they disappeared into the rain, I couldn't shake the feeling that Sophie's smile reminded me of someone. Not just anyone. Someone I'd lost long ago. Someone who used a smile exactly like that before the world made her forget how. Want to know what I discovered next? The truth that changed everything? Stay with me, because what happens in part 2 will leave you absolutely speechless. Dawn found me at my kitchen table with Sophie's drawing spread out before me and coffee growing cold in my hands. I'd given up on sleep around 4 in the morning, when the questions became louder than the silence. I climbed up to my study and pulled the photo albums from the top shelf. The ones I'd hidden after Sarah died, because looking at them hurt too much. The one labeled Victoria, childhood, felt heavy in my hands. On the 3rd page, Victoria's 8th birthday party. Yellow dress dotted with sunflowers. Chocolate cake smeared on her hands. Dark hair falling in waves. And that smile. Dimple in her left cheek, but not her right. Nose crinkling. Head tilted just so. Sophie's smile. Exactly. I turned pages with trembling fingers. 6 years old. 8. 9. Every photograph showed that same face, those same features I'd seen last night in a little girl wearing a bee-covered raincoat. The resemblance wasn't just similar. It was identical. Another photograph. Victoria at 8, sitting on my shoulders at a 4th of July parade. Completely trusting that I'd never let her fall. When had we lost that? When had my daughter stopped looking at me with trust? I knew the answer. The day Sarah collapsed in the garden. Massive stroke. Sudden. They said it was mercifully quick, but there was nothing merciful about the hole it left in our lives. Sarah had been the glue holding our family together. Without her, Victoria and I became strangers speaking different languages. Victoria moved out 6 months after the funeral. We had dinner once a month after that. Stiff, awkward affairs where we discussed business and weather and everything except what actually mattered. I told myself she needed space to grieve. But what if I'd been wrong about everything? My phone buzzed, making me jump. Michael's text. Hope you're feeling better this morning. Sophie wanted me to make sure you got home safely. I typed back. I'm fine. Thank you again. His response came quickly. Anytime. Sophie's already planning your next birthday party. Ha ha ha. Despite everything, I smiled. Then I pulled up Victoria's contact and hit call. Straight to voicemail. Again. It's Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice level. We need to talk. Call me back. The doorbell rang before I could say more. Raymond Foster stood on my porch holding a casserole dish. My neighbor for 23 years, Sarah's dear friend. One of the few people who'd checked on me regularly after she passed. Morning, Richard, he said, his weathered face creasing with concern. Martha made her lasagna. Thought you might like some. We settled at the kitchen table with coffee. Raymond talked about the Seahawks until he said something that made me freeze. Victoria stopped by yesterday. Looking for you. I set down my cup very carefully. She was here, around 3. Said she'd been trying to call. He studied me over the rim of his mug. She seemed worried. Asked if I'd noticed anything off about you lately. My stomach dropped. Off. Her word, Raymond said. Wanted to know if you'd been forgetful. If you'd said or done anything unusual. He paused, watching my reaction. I got the impression she was hoping I'd say something different. The coffee turned to acid in my stomach. What did you tell her? I asked quietly. The truth. That you seem sharp as always. His eyes narrowed. Richard, what's going on? I looked at my old friend. Raymond had been a detective before he retired. If anyone would understand, if someone wanted to make it look like I was incompetent, I said slowly, what would they need? Jesus. Raymond leaned back in his chair. Medical records. Testimony from people close to you. Documentation of confusion, memory loss, poor judgment. He fixed me with a hard look. Your own daughter? Maybe I'm paranoid, I said. Are you? I didn't answer. The restaurant incident. The questions to neighbors. The careful construction of a narrative about my declining mental state. It all fit too perfectly. After Raymond left, I pulled out Michael's business card again. Portland, Oregon. Sophie's mother left 8 years ago. 8 years ago was 2016. The same year Victoria took that sabbatical from Harrison Industries. 9 months of finding herself. She'd come back different. Harder. Colder. more focused on business. What if she hadn't been traveling? What if she'd been in Portland? I opened my laptop and searched. Portland, Oregon mother abandons baby 2016. The third result stopped my heart. A human interest story from the Oregonian. March 2016. Single father raises newborn after mother's disappearance. The article was short. A young software developer named Michael Chun whose girlfriend left 2 weeks after giving birth. The girlfriend's name, Elena Chun, though the reporter noted Chun might not have been her real last name. Elena, not Victoria, but the timeline matched. February 2016, when Victoria would have been in Portland. The article said Elena claimed to be 21, a college student, though Michael suspected she was older. Victoria was 29 in 2016. I sat back, my heart hammering. The photo album still lay open on the table. 8-year-old Victoria grinning with that dimpled smile. I looked from a photograph to Michael's business card to the newspaper article on my screen. The resemblance was undeniable. The timeline matched perfectly, and the woman who'd abandoned Michael and Sophie was exactly the age Victoria would have been, in exactly the city where Victoria had found herself. Elena Chun, Victoria Margaret Harrison. Even the initials were similar. I thought about Victoria's coldness these past 3 years, her sudden interest in my health, my memory, my confusion, the canceled reservation at Riverside Manor, Raymond's revelation that she'd been asking neighbors about my mental state. She wasn't just stealing from me or trying to gain control of my assets. She was trying to bury a secret, an 8-year-old secret with dark hair and a dimpled smile who called strangers grandpa without hesitation. My hand shook as I closed the laptop. I needed more than suspicions and circumstantial evidence. I needed proof. I needed to know exactly what Victoria had been doing, what she was planning, how deep this deception went, and I needed to know if Michael had any idea who Elena really was. But first, I needed to see what else my daughter might have left behind, what other evidence she'd planted or stolen, what other pieces of this puzzle were hidden in my own home. I looked at the clock. 11:47 a.m. The whole morning had vanished while I'd been lost in photographs and newspaper archives and terrible realizations. I stood up, my knees protesting, and looked around my study. At the filing cabinets full of decades of documents. At the safe hidden behind Sarah's favorite painting. At the security camera mounted discreetly in the corner. If Victoria had been building a case against me, there would be evidence. Medical records I'd never seen. Forged documents. Things missing that should be here. The timeline matched. The resemblance was undeniable. And if I was right about what I suspected, then everything I thought I knew about my daughter was a lie. The evidence I found that night, oh my God, it made me question everything. Part 3 is where this story takes a turn you won't see coming. Don't go anywhere. The evaluation was a forgery. Sitting there in the dark, I finally understood Victoria's plan. She wasn't just stealing money. She was building a legal case to have me declared incompetent, to take control of everything I owned, to put me somewhere I couldn't interfere. And Sophie was the reason. Sweet Sophie, who'd called me Grandpa Richard, who'd drawn me that picture. She was the secret Victoria needed buried, proof of a past she'd erased, a child she'd abandoned, a lie she'd lived for 8 years. If I uncovered the truth, if I connected Elena to Victoria, everything would collapse. She needed me silenced, controlled, declared unfit before I could expose it all. My daughter was trying to destroy me, and at last I understood why. The realization settled slowly, like ice in my chest. Every doubt I'd brushed aside. Every moment I'd laughed at myself for forgetting. All of it had been carefully engineered. Victoria had layered deception upon deception, trusting that I would question myself before I ever questioned her. Grief had made me vulnerable. Loneliness had made me trusting. She had used both. What frightened me most wasn't the money or the jewelry. It was how close she'd come to succeeding. Another month, and the paperwork would have been filed. My voice dismissed as confusion. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being robbed of it. And now that I knew the truth, I also knew that survival depended on patience, on evidence, on choosing the right moment to act. Very, very carefully. Tell me in the comments if you've ever had someone you trusted betray you like this. because what I had to do next, it broke my heart into pieces. Part 4 is where I finally fight back. By Sunday morning, I made my decision. I couldn't do this alone. Whatever Victoria was planning, whatever she'd done 8 years ago, Michael deserved to know the truth. And I needed to know if my suspicions were right. At 9 o'clock, I pulled out the business card he'd given me at the restaurant and dialed before I could second-guess myself. He answered on the third ring. "Hello. Michael, it's Richard Harrison. From the other night." A pause. "Mr. Harrison, is everything all right?" "No," I said, and heard how rough my voice sounded. "No, it's not. I need to ask you something about Sophie's mother." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Then, can we meet in person?" "Yes, please. There's a coffee shop downtown. Harbor Coffee on 3rd Street. 10:30. I'll be there." I arrived 15 minutes early, but Michael was already waiting at a corner booth. Hands wrapped around a mug he wasn't drinking from. He looked like he hadn't slept either. Dark circles under his eyes, jaw tight with tension. He stood when he saw me. "Mr. Harrison." "Richard, please." I slid into the seat across from him. A server came by. I ordered coffee I didn't want, just to have something to do with my hands. When she left, Michael leaned forward. "Sophie's with a babysitter," he said quietly. I didn't want her hearing this conversation. Whatever this conversation is. I nodded. "Smart. You said you wanted to ask about her mother." I took a breath. "When did Elena leave?" His jaw tightened. "February 2016. 2 weeks after Sophie was born." He said it like he'd said it 1,000 times before. To doctors and social workers and curious strangers. "Valentine's Day, actually. Sophie was born on Valentine's Day. Elena left on the 28th. 2 weeks. She'd stayed with her newborn daughter for exactly 2 weeks, then vanished." "Did she ever tell you her full name?" Michael's eyes narrowed. "Elena Chun. At least, that's what she said. But I always suspected Chun wasn't her real last name. She was cagey about her past. No family photos. No social media. Always paid cash. I thought maybe she was running from something. An abusive ex? Maybe, or family trouble." He paused. "Why are you asking?" Instead of answering, I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery. I'd spent an hour last night selecting the right pictures. Recent ones of Victoria at company events. Clear shots of her face. I turned the phone toward Michael. "Do you recognize this woman?" He looked down at the screen. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his face went completely white. The mug in his hands trembled. Coffee sloshed over the rim onto the table. "That's her," he whispered. "That's Elena." The words hung in the air between us. The coffee shop noise faded to nothing. The hiss of the espresso machine. The chatter of other customers. The clink of cups. There was only Michael's stricken face and the photograph of my daughter on the screen between us. "That's my daughter," I said quietly. "Victoria Harrison." Michael stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. Several people turned to look. He didn't seem to notice. His hands were shaking. "Your daughter," he said. He wasn't asking. He was processing. "Your daughter abandoned Sophie. Your daughter is the woman who left my 2-week-old baby in the middle of the night with a goddamn note." "I didn't know," I said quickly. "I swear to God." "Michael, I had no idea until Friday night. When I saw Sophie, when I saw her smile, I thought she looked familiar, but I couldn't." I stopped, tried to collect myself. Victoria disappeared for 9 months in 2015 and 2016. She said she was traveling, finding herself. She came back different, colder, more focused on business. I thought it was grief. My wife had died, and Victoria and I weren't handling it well. Michael sat back down slowly, like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. "She told me she was 21, a student at Portland Community College. We met at a coffee shop near campus. We dated for 6 months before." He gestured vaguely. "Before Sophie. She was 29, I said. "In 2016, Victoria was 29 years old. She lied about her age, her name, her whole life." "Oh, Jesus Christ." Michael put his head in his hands. "I spent 8 years trying to find her. 8 years of Sophie asking why her mama didn't love her. 8 years of wondering what I'd done wrong, what I could have said or done differently to make her stay." He looked up at me, and his eyes were blazing. "And she was just playing house. slumming it with the poor software developer before going back to her real life. I don't know what she was doing, I said honestly, but I'm going to find out. The server brought my coffee. Neither of us acknowledged her. When she left, Michael spoke again, his voice quieter now, but no less intense. Sophie is your granddaughter. Yes. And Victoria, your daughter, has been pretending for 8 years that Sophie doesn't exist. Yes. Why? It was the question I've been asking myself all night. I don't know, I said, but I think... I stopped, considering how much to tell him. Then I decided he deserved all of it. I think she's trying to make sure I never find out about Sophie. She's been building a case to have me declared mentally incompetent. Forged medical documents. Drugged my food. Stolen from me. If she can get conservatorship, she controls everything. My money. My company. My ability to ask questions. Michael stared at me. She's trying to have you declared incompetent so you won't discover you have a granddaughter. I think so. Sophie is evidence of a past Victoria erased. If I started asking questions, if I connected the dots. I met his eyes. She needed to silence me first. We sat in silence, the weight of it crushing. Around us, the coffee shop continued its Sunday morning routine. People laughed, ordered pastries, made plans for the day. Normal life happening while our worlds crumbled. Finally, Michael spoke. His voice was different now. Harder. Determined. If Sophie is your granddaughter, he said slowly, then why is your daughter pretending she doesn't exist? It was the question that changed everything. Because now we both knew that whatever Victoria's reasons for abandoning Sophie, they were worth destroying her own father to keep hidden. Part 5 is the finale. The confrontation. The truth. And the moment everything exploded. You need to hear how this ends. We left the coffee shop separately, but an hour later, Michael was at my front door. I need to see it, he said. The evidence. Everything you found. I led him to my study, where documents from last night were still spread across my desk. Michael stood in the doorway, taking it all in. The open safe, scattered papers, the prescription bottle. Then he walked to the desk and started reading. I watched him examine the bank statements with missing months, the lorazepam bottle, the fake psychiatric evaluation. His jaw clenched tighter with each piece. Finally, he looked up. She's building a case to prove you're incompetent. I know, but why go to these lengths? He gestured at the evidence. If she wanted money, there are easier ways. That's what I can't figure out, I said. If she just needed money, I would have given it to her. This is scorched earth. Michael was quiet, thinking. How much is Harrison Industries worth? Conservatively? 18 million. With real estate and investments, closer to 23. He let out a low whistle. And if you were declared incompetent, who would get conservatorship? Probably Victoria. She's my only child. She already works there. So she control the company. Control your assets. Control your ability to ask questions. He picked up the lorazepam bottle. And if you're drugged and confused, no one would believe you if you try to fight it. And Sophie, I said quietly. Sophie is a loose end, Michael said, his voice flat with fury underneath. Proof of Victoria's past. If you discovered Sophie exists. She needed me silenced first. We stood in silence, the weight settling over us like a shroud. We need proof, I said finally. Real proof that Sophie is my granddaughter. Something that would hold up legally. DNA test, Michael said. Can you get a sample from Sophie? Hair from her brush. Yeah, I could do that. I'll find a private lab, somewhere discreet. And if the test confirms it? Michael asked. Then we figure out how to stop Victoria and protect Sophie. Michael extended his hand. Partners. I took it. Partners. We stood there. Two strangers 48 hours ago, now bound by a little girl with dark hair and a woman who'd betrayed us both. Then Michael cleared his throat. There's something else you should know. I waited. That night at the restaurant, when I invited you to join us. He paused. That wasn't a coincidence. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? I've been looking for Elena for 8 years. About 4 months ago, I was doing another search. Found a business article about Harrison Industries. There was a photo of the leadership team. He looked at me. And you saw Victoria? I saw Elena. The article said Victoria Harrison, VP of Operations. So I started digging. Found more photos. The company website. He gestured at me. Found you. And Elena had a photo in her Portland apartment. An old picture from a company picnic. You and a teenage girl. I didn't think much of it then, but when I saw you on the Harrison Industries website, I recognized you. I stared at him. You've been watching me for 4 months? Trying to figure out how to approach you without sounding crazy. What was I supposed to say? Your daughter might be my missing ex-girlfriend. He laughed without humor. Then I saw the scene at the restaurant. Saw them turn you away. And I thought maybe you needed to know the truth as much as I did. You orchestrated this. I took an opportunity, Michael said. I didn't plan for your daughter to humiliate you. But when it happened, I saw a chance to help you and get the answers I've been searching for. I should have been angry. He manipulated me, used my pain as an opening. But all I felt was relief. Michael had been looking for the truth as desperately as I was. You spent 8 years searching, I said, for Sophie, so she'd know her mother didn't disappear for no reason. I looked at this man who'd become an ally in 48 hours and realized Victoria had miscalculated badly, because now there were 2 of us. We should get started on that DNA test, I said. Michael nodded. I'll get Sophie's sample tonight. I'll make the calls tomorrow. He headed for the door, then stopped. Richard, whatever happens next, Sophie comes first. No matter what we find out, Sophie's safety comes first. Agreed. After he left, I stood in my study looking at the evidence. The fake evaluation, the drug medication, the stolen money. My daughter had orchestrated all of this to protect a secret she'd buried 8 years ago. But she'd made one mistake. She'd underestimated what a father and a man who'd spent 8 years loving the daughter she'd abandoned would do to protect a little girl with dark hair and a dimpled smile. The email arrived at 7:30 Tuesday morning while I was sitting at my kitchen table with coffee I couldn't taste and toast I couldn't eat. Subject, results. Patient ID, P2024928. From Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Pacific Northwest Genetics Laboratory. My hand shook as I clicked to open it. The PDF downloaded slowly. Or maybe it just felt slow because every second was an eternity. Finally, the document filled my screen. Paternity test results, confidential. Alleged grandfather, Richard James Harrison. Child, Sophie Rose Chun. Date of collection, October 2nd, 2024. Date of analysis, October 4th, 2024. I scrolled down, my heart hammering so hard I could feel in my throat. Past the technical details about genetic markers and probability calculations. Past the laboratory certification. To the conclusion at the bottom of the page. Conclusion. Based on the genetic analysis of the submitted samples, the probability that Richard James Harrison is the biological grandfather of Sophie Rose Chun is 99.97%. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen. 99.97%. Not a possibility. Not a likelihood. A certainty. Sophie was my granddaughter. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I tried to blink them away, but they kept coming. I hadn't cried this much since Sarah's funeral, and now I couldn't seem to stop. My granddaughter. Sarah's granddaughter. Oh, Sarah. The thought of Sarah hit me like a physical blow. I pushed away from the computer and walked to the living room. To the mantel where her photograph still sat in its silver frame. She was smiling at the camera, her hair caught by wind, standing in the garden she'd loved so much. We have a granddaughter, I whispered to the photograph. Her name is Sophie. I remember the conversations we'd had late at night when Victoria was young. Sarah would talk about the future, about grandchildren we'd spoil, holidays we'd host, the family we'd build together across generations. I wish Victoria would give us a grandchild someday, she'd said once, not long before she died. We've been sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. I want to see what kind of mother she'll be. I want to teach her grandbaby all the things I taught her. You will, I'd promised, holding her hand. But that was 3 years ago, and now Sarah was gone, and the granddaughter she'd wished for had been alive this whole time. 8 years old, with dark hair and hazel eyes and a smile that could light up a room. And I'd never known she existed. I pulled out my phone and called Michael. He answered on the first ring. Did you get the results? His voice was tight. 99.97%, I said. Sophie was my granddaughter. Silence. Then I heard him exhale, a long, shaky breath that might have been a sob. Jesus, he whispered. I mean, we knew, but knowing for certain. Yeah. Another pause. What do we do now? It was the same question I'd been asking myself for the past 10 minutes. We need to figure out why Victoria abandoned Sophie, and what she's planning now that might connect to it. Do you think she knows we're investigating? I don't know, but we need to be careful. If she realizes we've made the connection. I didn't finish the sentence. We both knew what Victoria was capable of. Should we tell Sophie? Michael asked quietly. That you're her grandfather. The question made my chest ache. I wanted to say yes. Wanted to tell that beautiful little girl that she had family. That she wasn't just the daughter of a mother who'd abandoned her. She was my granddaughter. Sarah's legacy. Part of a family that would love her unconditionally. But I couldn't. Not yet. She's 8 years old, I said, my voice breaking. And she's already been through so much. If we tell her now, before we know what Victoria's planning, before we can protect her. I stopped. Swallowed hard. Let's keep her safe first. Then we'll figure out how to tell her the truth. You're right, Michael said, his voice rough. God, I hate that you're right, but you are. That afternoon, I made a phone call I never thought I'd make. To my attorney, Martin Hughes, a man who'd known our family for 30 years. Martin, I need your help with something delicate. I told him everything. The evidence, the forgeries, the money, the plan. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. Richard, Martin said finally, his tone grave. This is very serious. You need to contact law enforcement immediately. What charges are we talking about? Elder abuse, fraud, criminal conspiracy, identity theft, possibly more. This isn't something you can handle on your own. You need the FBI and local police involved. Today, I thanked him and hung up. Michael met my eyes across my study. Greenwood Hills Police Station, he asked. I nodded. Let's go. The Greenwood Hills Police Station was a low brick building on the edge of town, surrounded by oak trees, in a parking lot that smelled faintly of asphalt and coffee. Michael and I walked in together. The officer at the front desk directed us to Detective William Cooper's office. Cooper was in his mid-50s, with gray at his temples and the kind of calm, weathered face that came from decades of hearing terrible things. He gestured for us to sit. Gentlemen, he said, what can I do for you? I laid it all out. The fake psychiatric evaluation. The lorazepam prescribed by a non-existent doctor. The missing bank statements. The jewelry. The deleted security footage. I showed him the documents. The medication bottle. The timeline Michael and I had pieced together. Cooper listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. Mr. Harrison, he said, this falls under elder abuse statutes. It's also financial exploitation. And given the scope of what you're describing, I'm going to need to bring in the FBI. The FBI? Michael asked. Cooper nodded. They have a dedicated unit for elder justice cases. This isn't just theft. It's systematic. He picked up his phone and made a call. 20 minutes later, a man in a dark suit walked into the office. Special Agent Spencer Torres, he said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm. His eyes sharp. FBI Elder Justice Initiative. Detective Cooper briefed me. Mr. Harrison, we take these cases very seriously. I handed him the evidence. The bank statements showing the unauthorized transfers. The fake evaluation. The bottle of lorazepam. The background report Michael had compiled. Torres studied each document carefully. When he looked up, his expression was grim. We need to build a case, he said. That means gathering more evidence, preferably in real time. Mr. Harrison, would you be willing to help us collect recorded evidence? I stared at him. You want me to record my own daughter? If you're willing, Torres said evenly. We need her to admit what she's doing. A confession on tape would be invaluable. The words hit me like a punch. I'd known this was coming, but hearing it out loud made it real. Michael leaned forward. What about Sophie? He asked. She's 8 years old. She can't be dragged into this. Torres met his gaze. We'll protect the child. Our priority is stopping the people doing harm. If Sophie is safe with you, we'll make sure she stays that way. And Marcus Wade? I asked. We're already looking into him, Cooper said. If what you've told us is accurate, he's done this before. We'll investigate him separately. Torres pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. Here's what I'm proposing. You meet with your daughter again. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere we can monitor. You were a wire. You get her talking. If she admits to any part of this, the forgeries, the medications, the money, we move in. I'll look down at the folder. Inside were consent forms, legal disclaimers, instructions for wearing a recording device. You'd be helping us not just with your case, Torres added, but potentially with others. People like Marcus Wade prey on vulnerable individuals. If we can tie him to this, we can shut him down. Michael looked at me. Richard, you don't have to do this. But I did. I knew I did. When? I asked. As soon as you're ready, Torres said. We'll set it up. Brief you on what to say. Monitor everything in real time. You won't be alone. I nodded slowly. Then let's do it. Cooper stood and shook my hand. You're doing the right thing, Mr. Harrison. Torres handed me a business card. Call me when you're ready to set up the meeting. We'll take it from there. Michael and I walked out of the police station into the bright morning sunlight. My hands were shaking. You okay? Michael asked. I wasn't sure how to answer. I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Relief that I was no longer facing this alone. That people with authority and resources were finally involved. But also dread, because I knew what came next would tear my family apart. I don't know, I said finally, but we're doing this for Sophie. For Sarah. For everyone Victoria and Marcus have hurt. Michael nodded. Then we'll see it through. We climbed into his car, and as we drove back toward Greenwood Hills, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. The authorities were involved now. There was no going back. And somewhere out there, Victoria had no idea what was coming. The FBI moved quickly. By the following Monday afternoon, there were 2 technicians in my study installing surveillance equipment. A camera hidden in the bookshelf, microphones in the smoke detectors, and a small recording device were clipped to my belt whenever Victoria came by. It's voice-activated, Special Agent Torres explained, showing me the device. You won't have to do anything except talk. We'll be monitoring remotely. Michael stood near the window, arms crossed. And if something goes wrong, we'll have a team nearby at all times, Torres assured him. Mr. Harrison won't be in danger. I wasn't so sure about that, but I nodded anyway. Day 1, Monday evening. Victoria arrived at 6:30. Unannounced, as usual. I heard her car in the driveway and felt the small recorder press against my ribs beneath my sweater. She let herself in with her key. Hi, Dad, she said, breezing into the living room. Her tone was light, but her eyes were calculating. I wanted to check in on you. I'm fine, I said carefully. She sat down across from me, folding her hands in her lap. Actually, I've been thinking. You're getting older. Living alone in this big house, it's not safe. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Are you? She tilted her head, as if genuinely concerned. Dad, I think it might be time to consider an assisted living facility. Somewhere with staff. People who can keep an eye on you. The words felt rehearsed. I forced myself to stay calm. Why would I need that? Because you're 71 years old, she said, leaning forward. And Dr. Wade seems to think it would be in your best interest. There it was. Marcus's name. Spoken aloud. I see, I said quietly. Victoria smiled. Just think about it. Okay. She left 10 minutes later. As soon as the door closed, Torres called. We got it, he said. She mentioned Wade. That ties her to him directly. Day 3. Wednesday afternoon. FBI surveillance tracked Victoria to a small cafe on the north side of town. Marcus Wade met her there at 2 o'clock. I wasn't present, but Torres called me afterward with the details. We couldn't get audio, he explained, but we had a lip reader analyze the footage. Your daughter told Wade. The old man won't cooperate. Wade replied, we need to push harder. Get him committed to a psych facility. I felt sick. They're escalating, Torres continued. That's good for us. Means they're desperate. Day 5. Friday morning. Torres had instructed me to fake a medical episode. Something believable, but not dangerous. Something that would prompt Victoria to act. So on Friday morning, I called her. Victoria, I said, letting my voice waver slightly. I'm not feeling well. She arrived within 20 minutes. I was sitting in the living room when she walked in, clutching my chest theatrically. "Dad," she said sharply. "What's wrong?" "I don't know," I said. "Dizzy. My chest." She didn't hesitate. She pulled out her phone and called 911. The paramedics arrived 12 minutes later. They checked my vitals and loaded me onto a stretcher. Victoria rode with me to the hospital, her face tight with what might have been concern or frustration. At the ER, the attending physician ran tests. "Mr. Harrison," he said finally, "you're perfectly fine. All your vitals are normal." Victoria's expression hardened. "But he collapsed." "There's no medical indication of that," the doctor said gently. Victoria stared at me. For just a moment, I saw something cold flicker across her face. On the drive home, she didn't say a word. Day 7, Sunday evening. Torres called me that night. "We have enough," he said. "Surveillance footage, the cafe meeting, the hospital incident, the recordings from your house. It all paints a clear picture. But we need one more thing." "What?" "A direct threat or a demand. Something explicit that we can use in court. Right now, everything's circumstantial. We need her to make a move." "How do I get her to do that?" "Invite her over," Torres said. "Tell her you're ready to discuss arrangements for your future. Make it sound like you're giving in. She'll think she's won. That's when people get careless." I took a breath. And then we move in. I sent Victoria a text message that night. "Can we talk? I'm ready to discuss my future." She replied within seconds. "Friday morning, 10 a.m. We'll settle this once and for all." I stared at the screen. Friday, 5 days away. 5 days for her to plan whatever she was planning. Michael came by late that evening. We sat in the study, neither of us saying much. "You ready for this?" he asked finally. "I have to be," I said. Michael nodded. "Then we'll be ready too." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Victoria as a child, the way she used to hold my hand, the way she'd laugh at my terrible jokes. I thought about Sarah and how proud she'd been of our daughter. And I thought about Sophie, 8 years old, who had no idea her mother had abandoned her, who had no idea that in 5 days, everything would change. I knew what was coming. The wire, the confrontation, the confession, the moment when federal agents would walk through my door and arrest my own daughter. Friday would destroy my family, but it was the only way to save it. I told myself that over and over as I lay in the dark, waiting for morning. Because if I didn't believe it, I wasn't sure I could go through with what came next. Friday morning arrived cold and clear. I stood in my study at 9:30, watching Special Agent Torres attach the wire to my chest. The device was smaller than I'd expected, about the size of a quarter, with a thin microphone that ran up under my collar. "You're going to be fine," Torres said, adjusting the placement. "We'll hear everything. If at any point you feel unsafe, just say the word Sarah. That's the panic signal. We'll be inside in 30 seconds. I nodded, though my mouth was too dry to speak. Michael stood by the window. He hadn't said much all morning. Detective Cooper was already outside in the surveillance van, parked 2 blocks away with a clear line of sight to the house. "Remember," Torres said, "let her talk. Don't push too hard. If she feels cornered, she'll shut down. We need her to admit what she's planning, ideally with specifics. The transfer of assets, the fake medical evaluation, the threats, anything that ties her to Marcus Wade." "And Sophie?" I asked. "We have officers monitoring Victoria's apartment," Torres said. "If Sophie's there, we'll know. But right now, our priority is getting this confession on tape." At 9:55, Torres and Michael left through the back door. I heard the van door close in the distance. I was alone. Victoria arrived at exactly 10 o'clock. I heard her car in the driveway, the sound of her heels on the front steps. She let herself in with her key, just like she always did. "Dad," she called out. "In here," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She walked into the living room looking calm and composed. She was wearing a tailored blazer and carrying a leather folder. Everything about her screamed control. "Good morning," she said, sitting down across from me without waiting for an invitation. "Where's Sophie?" I asked. The question hung in the air. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Sophie, Michael Chin's daughter," I said quietly. "Your daughter?" For just a moment, Victoria's mask slipped. Pure shock flashed across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by cold calculation. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. Elena Chun, Portland, 2016. You abandoned your newborn daughter and disappeared. Victoria stood up. You're delusional. I have DNA evidence, I said. 99.97% probability. Sophie is my granddaughter. Your child. Her face went pale. How did you? She stopped herself. But it was too late. I know everything, Victoria. The fake evaluation. The drug meals. The stolen money. Marcus Wade. All of it. She sat back down slowly. What do you want? I want to understand why. Why you abandoned Sophie. Why you're trying to destroy me. She laughed, a bitter sound. You want to understand? Fine. After Mom died, you forgot I existed. You were so wrapped up in your own grief that you didn't see mine. I was invisible. That's not true, isn't it? I needed you, and you weren't there. So I left. I went to Portland. I tried to build a new life, but I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle being a mother. So I came home. And Sophie. Sophie was a mistake, she said coldly. Well, I needed to bury. If you found out about her, you try to fix it. Everyone would know what I did. That I ran away. That I abandoned my own child. Her voice rose. I couldn't let that happen. So I made sure you couldn't interfere. Whatever it takes. There it was. The confession. Torres would have it on tape now. You drugged me, I said quietly. You stole from me. You tried to have me declared incompetent. You left me no choice, she said. You're getting too close. Asking too many questions. I had to stop you. She stood up. And I still will. Sign the power of attorney by Monday, or I disappear with Sophie. And this time, you'll never find us. She walked to the door. Victoria, I said. She paused. Sophie deserves better than this. Better than you running. Better than being used as leverage. Sophie will have everything I never did, she said. Money. Freedom. A life that's actually hers. And what about a mother who stays? The question hung in the air. Victoria's jaw tightened. It's on the papers, Dad. Monday. Noon. Or lose everything. She walked out. The door closed behind her. For a long moment, I just sat there, my heart pounding. Then Torres's voice crackled in my earpiece. We got her, he said. Every word. Richard, you did it. For hours after the recording, I sat in the FBI surveillance van with Michael, watching everything unfold on a bank of monitors. Special Agent Torres had insisted we stay back. For safety reasons, he'd said, but I think he knew I needed to see this happen. I needed to know it was real. On the center screen, 2 FBI agents approached the glass doors of Marcus Wade's office building downtown. Torres and Detective Cooper led the team, flanked by 4 uniformed officers. Michael leaned forward, his hands clenched. They're really doing this? Yes, I said quietly. They are. The receptionist at Marcus's office looked up as the agents entered. She was young, probably in her 20s, and her smile faltered the moment she saw the badges. Can I help you? She asked nervously. Torres held up his credentials. FBI. We need to speak with Dr. Marcus Wade. Do you have an appointment? No, Torres said, but he'll want to see us. The receptionist picked up the phone, her hands shaking slightly. A moment later, Marcus's voice came through the intercom. What's this about? Elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy, Torres said loudly enough for the whole office to hear. You can come out here, or we can come in there. There was a pause. Then Marcus emerged from his office, his face composed, but his eyes sharp with calculation. I'm not sure what you think you have, Marcus said smoothly, but I'm a licensed mental health professional. Anything between me and my clients is confidential. Cooper stepped forward. You're not licensed, Mr. Wade. You dropped out of medical school in 2018, which means you have no doctor-patient privilege to hide behind. Marcus's composure slipped for just a second. I like to call my lawyer. You can do that from the station, Torres said. He nodded to the officers. Marcus Wade, you're under arrest for elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy to commit identity theft. The officers moved in. Marcus didn't resist, but his jaw tightened as they cuffed his hands behind his back. You have the right to remain silent, Cooper began, reading him his Miranda rights as they let him out. Michael exhaled beside me. One down. One to go, I said. On the second monitor, a police cruiser pulled up outside Victoria's apartment building. 2 officers got out and walked up the stairs to the 3rd floor. My heart pounded as they knocked on the door. Victoria opened it, still dressed in the blazer she'd worn to my house that morning. Her expression shifted from annoyance to alarm. "What's going on?" she asked. "Victoria Harrison," one of the officers said. "Yes. You're under arrest for elder abuse, fraud, extortion, and conspiracy." "This is ridiculous," Victoria said, her voice rising. "My father is senile. He doesn't know what he's saying." "We have a recording of your conversation this morning," the officer said. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Victoria's face went white. "You had him wired," she whispered. The officer didn't answer. He just turned her around and cuffed her wrists. And then I heard it, a small voice from inside the apartment. "Daddy." Michael shot to his feet. "Sophie." Torres nodded. "Go." Michael was out of the van before I could say a word. I watched on the monitor as he sprinted up the stairs and into the apartment. Sophie stood in the living room, her eyes wide and frightened. "Daddy," she cried, running to him. Michael scooped her up and held her tight, burying his face in her hair. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe now. Why are they taking that lady away?" Sophie asked, her voice small. "It's okay," Michael said, his voice breaking. "You're coming home with me." One of the officers spoke quietly to Michael, confirming that Sophie was unharmed and that she could leave with him immediately. Michael nodded, still holding Sophie like he'd never let go. On the monitor, Victoria was being led down the stairs in handcuffs. She didn't look back. I sat in the van for a long time after the monitors went dark. Torres had stepped outside to coordinate with the officers transporting Marcus and Victoria to the station. The van was quiet except for the hum of the equipment. I thought about the last time I'd seen Victoria without anger or fear clouding my vision. She'd been 17, laughing at something Sarah had said over dinner. Her whole face had lit up. She'd been so bright, so full of life. Where had that girl gone? Michael climbed back into the van, Sophie asleep in his arms. She looked so small, her face pressed against his shoulder. "She okay?" I asked. "She's exhausted," Michael said. "But she's okay." I reached out and gently touched Sophie's hair. She stirred slightly, but didn't wake. "Thank you," Michael said quietly. "For everything. For believing me. For fighting for her." "She's my granddaughter," I said. "I'd do anything for her." Michael nodded. "I know." Torres came back a few minutes later. "Wade and Victoria are both in custody. They'll be arraigned on Monday. Given the evidence, I don't expect either of them to make bail." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we build the case," Torres said. "Testimonies. Financials. The recording. It'll take a few months, but we'll get convictions." "And Sophie?" "Michael has full physical custody," Torres said. "Victoria's parental rights will likely be terminated, given the circumstances. But that's up to the family court judge." I looked at Sophie, still asleep in Michael's arms. She had no idea how close she'd come to disappearing forever. No idea that her mother had used her as a bargaining chip. But she was safe now. That was what mattered. That evening, back at my house, I stood in the study and looked at the photo of Sarah on my desk. She was smiling, her hand resting on my shoulder. It had been taken at our 40th anniversary, just a few months before she got sick. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening to Victoria. I'm sorry I failed her." But even as I said it, I knew the truth. I hadn't failed Victoria. She'd made her choices, and I'd made mine. I'd chosen Sophie. I'd chosen the truth. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. A week after the arrests, the house felt different. Quieter. Emptier. I spent hours going through old photo albums, studying pictures of Victoria as a child, trying to understand where I'd lost her. The doorbell rang at 10 in the morning. When I opened the door, Michael stood there with Sophie beside him. "I hope this is okay," Michael said. "Sophie wanted to see you." I looked down at the little girl in a yellow dress, clutching a stuffed rabbit. Her dark hair was pulled into a ponytail, and her eyes, Sarah's eyes, looked up at me with cautious curiosity. "Grandpa Richard?" she asked. The word broke something open inside me. I knelt down, my vision blurring. "Yes, sweetheart," I said. "That's me." Sophie stepped forward and wrapped her arms around my neck. I held her, feeling 8 lost years collapse into that single embrace. "Why are you crying?" she asked. "Because I'm happy," I said softly. "Because I finally get to meet you." Michael cleared his throat. "Can we come in?" "Of course." We sat in the living room, where I'd confronted Victoria days earlier. Now Sophie sat beside me, swinging her legs and staring around. "This house is really big," she said. "It is," I replied. "It used to feel full." "You should get a dog," she said seriously. Michael smiled. "That's her answer to everything." I laughed. "Ha, for the first time in weeks. Maybe I will." Sophie studied me. "Daddy says you're my real grandpa." "That's true." "And that lady, she's my mom." "Yes." She was quiet. "Why did she leave me?" I glanced at Michael. He nodded. "Sometimes grown-ups make big mistakes," I said carefully. "Your mom wasn't ready to be a mother. So your dad raised you. And he did a wonderful job." "That's not a mistake," Sophie said. "That's mean." "You're right," I said. "And I'm sorry." "Is she coming back?" "Not for a long time." She thought for a moment. "Can I still call you Grandpa?" "I'd like that very much." She smiled, and it felt like seeing Sarah again. After Sophie went outside with Michael to explore the garden, my phone rang. "Special Agent Torres. The trial date's set," he said. "November 15th. That's soon. The evidence is strong. Victoria is charged with elder abuse, financial exploitation, and conspiracy. Marcus Wade is charged with fraud and practicing medicine without a license. Victoria could face 7 to 12 years. I closed my eyes. "And Sophie?" I asked. Michael filed to terminate Victoria's parental rights. "The judge will likely approve it. Michael will have full custody." "That's good," I said. "Are you okay?" Torres asked. I wasn't sure how to answer. My daughter was in jail. My wife was gone. My family was fractured. But Sophie was safe. "I will be," I said. That evening, after Michael and Sophie left, I sat at my desk and took out a piece of stationery. I've been thinking about this all week. I began to write. "Dear Victoria, I don't know if you'll read this, but I need to say what I should have said long ago. I failed you. After your mother died, I was lost in my own grief and didn't see yours. I didn't see how alone you felt. For that, I am truly sorry. But what you did to me, to Michael, to Sophie, was your choice. And now you must live with it. Sophie is safe. She is loved. I will make sure she never feels invisible. I hope someday you understand what you threw away. But I will not let Sophie suffer for your mistakes. Dad." I sealed the envelope and addressed it to the correctional facility where Victoria was being held. I didn't know if she would respond, but I had said what I needed to say. That night, I stood in the guest room overlooking the garden. Michael had mentioned Sophie loved yellow, so I'd already ordered paint and curtains. She would live with Michael, but she would have a room here too, a place where she belonged. I looked out at the darkening sky and thought of Sarah, of how much she would have loved Sophie. "I'll do better this time," I whispered, and I meant it. The courtroom was packed on November 15th. I sat in the gallery beside Michael, my hands folded in my lap, watching as they led Victoria in. She wore a navy blazer and kept her eyes fixed on the floor. She didn't look at me once. Marcus Wade sat at the defense table beside his attorney, his expression carefully neutral. But I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers drummed against the wood. The prosecutor presented the evidence methodically. The recordings, the bank statements, Marcus's fraudulent credentials, the fake psychiatric evaluation, each piece built on the last, constructing an undeniable picture of conspiracy and abuse. Victoria's attorney tried to argue that she'd been acting out of misguided concern for my well-being, that she'd only wanted to protect me. The judge wasn't convinced. Marcus took the stand and threw Victoria under the bus without hesitation. "She paid me to falsify the evaluation," he said. "She told me exactly what to write." Victoria's face crumpled, but she didn't speak. When the verdict came, it was swift. Guilty, on all counts. Both of them. The judge handed down the sentences. 8 years for Victoria, 12 for Marcus. Victoria collapsed into her chair, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I watched her, my daughter, my only child, and felt something break inside me that I knew would never fully heal. December 2024. I drove to the Washington State Correctional Facility on a cold Tuesday morning. A month after the trial, the building was gray and institutional, surrounded by high fences and razor wire. I went through security, surrendered my belongings, and was led to a visitation room divided by thick plexiglass panels. I sat down and waited. When Victoria walked in, I barely recognized her. She'd lost weight. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun. She wore the standard orange jumpsuit. She sat down across from me and picked up the phone. I did the same. "Hi, Dad," she said quietly. "Hi." We sat in silence for a moment. "I got your letter," she said finally. "Did you read it?" "Yes." And Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to tell me if you meant it," I said. "Your apology. Was it real?" She looked down. "I don't know. I wanted to hurt you. For a long time, I wanted that." "Why?" "Because you hurt me first," she said, her voice breaking. "When Mom died, you forgot I existed. You were so wrapped up in your own grief that you didn't see mine." "I know," I said, "and I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't change anything." "Maybe not," I said, "but I want to try." Victoria looked up. "Try what?" "To be your father again, if you'll let me." She stared at me for a long moment, searching my face for something. Sincerity, maybe, or proof that I meant it. "What about Sophie?" she asked. "She's safe. Michael's a good father. Does she hate me?" "No," I said. "She's confused. But she doesn't hate you." Victoria's tears spilled over. "Oh, will you bring her to see me?" she whispered. "When she's ready," I said. "And when you're ready." Victoria nodded slowly. "I'll come back next month," I said. "If you want me to." "Okay," she whispered. Early 2025. I visited Victoria every month. At first, our conversations were stilted, filled with long silences and unspoken hurt. But slowly, painfully slowly, we began to find our way back to each other. In March, Michael brought Sophie to visit. She drew a picture for Victoria, a family holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Victoria cried when she saw it and taped it to the wall of her cell. I wrote to Victoria every week. Sometimes she wrote back. Sometimes she didn't. But I kept writing anyway. She started attending therapy sessions offered by the prison. She told me it was helping, that she was beginning to understand why she'd made the choices she had. I set up a trust fund for Sophie's education. Michael and I became close friends, something I never would have predicted that rainy night at Riverside Manor. Sophie started calling me Grandpa Rich. It made me smile every time. Thanksgiving 2025. Michael, Sophie, and I sat around the dining room table in my house. I'd cooked a turkey, badly, but Sophie insisted it was delicious. Ha ha ha. We held hands and said grace. And for the first time in years, I felt something like wholeness. I raised my glass. To second chances, I said. To the family we're born into and the family we choose. To family, Michael echoed. Sophie grinned. Can we eat now? We laughed, and for a moment, everything felt right. Epilogue. I don't know if Victoria and I will ever have the relationship I once hoped for. I don't know if she'll truly forgive me, or if I'll fully forgive her. But I know this, I won't give up on her. Not again. 8 years is a long time, but it's also an opportunity, a chance for her to heal, for me to become the father I should have been all along. When she comes home, Sophie will be waiting. So will I, because that's what family does. We wait, we hope, and we try again. On my 71st birthday, I stood alone in the rain, wondering if my life had meant anything. Today, at 72, I sit at the dinner table with my granddaughter and her father. And I have my answer. Meaning doesn't lie in perfection. It lies in persistence, in love that refuses to quit, even when things get hard, especially when they get hard. My daughter made terrible choices. So did I. But we're still here, still trying. And I've learned that sometimes that's enough. And to you listening to this story, remember this. Sometimes the greatest battles we face aren't against others. They're against our own pride, our own blindness, our own refusal to see what's right in front of us. I stood in the rain on my 71st birthday, broken and alone, believing I'd lost everything. But God had other plans. He sent me Michael and Sophie that night, not by accident, by design. And through them, He showed me that redemption is always possible, even when we think we've gone too far. This isn't just a story about betrayal and justice. It's a story about second chances. It's a story about choosing love over bitterness, even when bitterness feels justified. Because at the end of the day, what good is revenge if it leaves you empty inside? What good is winning if you've lost your soul in the process? I thought revenge would bring me peace, that seeing Victoria arrested would somehow heal the wound she'd opened. But standing in that courtroom, watching my daughter sentenced to 8 years in prison, I realized something. Revenge doesn't heal. Only forgiveness does. And forgiveness isn't something you do once. It's something you choose every single day until it becomes part of who you are. Don't be like I was. Don't let grief turn you into someone who can't see the people who need you most. Don't let anger steal the years you could spend building something beautiful. Because life is short, and the people we love, even when they hurt us, are worth fighting for. God gave me Sophie when I thought I had nothing left to live for. He gave me a chance to be the grandfather I never got to be and the father I should have been all along. And for that, I am eternally grateful. If you're listening to this and thinking about your own story, ask yourself, is there someone you've given up on? Someone you've written off as too broken, too far gone, too difficult to love? Because I promise you, they're not. None of us are. We're all just people trying to find our way home. And sometimes home is the place we have to build from scratch. One conversation, one visit, one act of grace at a time. So here's my advice. Don't wait. Don't assume you have time. Don't let pride or pain keep you from the people you love. Because one day you'll stand in the rain like I did, and you'll realize that all the money, all the success, all the revenge in the world means nothing if you're standing there alone. Tell me in the comments if this story touched your heart. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you experienced a family story like this? Or have you ever had to choose between revenge and redemption? Share your story, because you never know who might need to hear it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Because these stories matter. They remind us that we're not alone in our struggles, that healing is possible, and that love, real, stubborn, never giving up love, is always worth it. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. It means more than you know. Before you go, I want to offer a gentle reminder. The stories shared on this channel include fictional elements thoughtfully crafted for educational and inspirational purposes. So if this type of content doesn't resonate with you, feel free to explore other videos that better suit your preferences. But if you're ready to hear more stories about faith, family, and the power of second chances, then stay tuned. Because there's so much more to come. God bless you. And remember, it's never too late to start again.